Did you inquire?
What is your name again? Sorry. Kristen?
Yes.
But then it just kept getting worse and worse. It kept getting higher and higher. And it's like, what did you do?
Well, but I did not go off nothing for that. I asked him about his history.
Dr. Fong, I did not say that you went off nothing.
I said I can still watch my children ski and be skied directly into my back by someone.
I also can't believe this is all on GoPro. What are the chances?
Do you have any idea where this link went? The link of the most important piece of evidence that could be presented at trial today?
It looks like it's somewhere out there in the cybersphere.
40 feet away and colorblind. I don't know how he can be positive about what he saw, especially with how much he changed his story.
Well, what does colorblind have to do with anything? My husband's colorblind.
Back in February of 2016, Terry Sanderson, a retired optometrist, got into a ski collision with Gwyneth Paltrow. She was Pepper Potts in Iron Man, and honestly, I don't know what other movies she's in, but I've probably seen them. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Gwyneth Paltrow was reported to be fine. She had some, a little bit of an injury, but she was like sore, nothing too serious. However, Terry Sanderson, he suffered from 4 fractured ribs and a brain concussion. And now it is 2023 and we are in court. This is a tough one, believe it or not. It really is. If you didn't watch any of the trial, this is a video for you because I'm going to recap everything that's happened so far. But if you did watch the trial, or maybe you missed some parts here and there, or you still just want to recap, well, this video is still for you. So we're going to recap everything that's happened so far. I believe we're in like day 4 or day 5 of trial. Let's start with day 1.
Tell the jury when I get out here how far away this door is back here.
That's 43 feet.
You're wondering, what are they doing here? Well, this witness is Craig Ramone. He is testifying for Terry Sanders, who is suing Gwyneth Paltrow for the ski collision. He's claiming that she crashed into him. He lost consciousness, broke 4 ribs, had a concussion. Meanwhile, she's countersuing because she said that he crashed into her. So Craig Ramone is one of the Meetup friends. You guys don't know what Meetup is? It's like an app or website where a bunch of people kind of get together and they do an activity together. In this case, they had a Meetup group and they were going skiing/snowboarding that day. And this 35, 40 feet demonstration is showing how far Craig Ramone was when he saw the collision between the 2 people.
Well, we were skiing down the bend, down the run. I heard this yell, this scream, and then I looked over, and then about maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then I heard the scream, and then I see this skier just slam into the back of Terry, and she just slammed him.
How hard?
Very hard. Very hard. She hits him right directly in the back. And his skis actually, the tips go out like this, and he falls face down. So he's kind of spread eagle, and he goes face down, and Gwyneth's on the top of him, and they go down like this, and then Gwyneth hits him, and then bounces off and slides to the right about 5 or 10 feet. I skied down, and then I went on to the left side of Terry. I was uphill, but then when I stopped, I was downhill. I was about equal with Gwyneth. When I got there, I just was asking Terry, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And Terry, he wasn't moving. His face was actually in the snow, and his arms are out like this, and his helmet's stuck kind of in the snow. And then Gwyneth gets up, and then I'm asking her, "Are you okay?"
Did Gwyneth Paltrow, we now know it was her, say anything at all, utter any words at all to you?
No, I asked her if she was okay, and she just looked at me.
What did Terry say, if anything?
He wasn't talking. He didn't even start moving for probably a couple of minutes. No, he was unresponsive.
So far, we have a pretty decent visual of what happened based on what this witness says. So next, we're going to talk about a ski instructor, Eric Christensen. Gwyneth Paltrow had hired ski instructors that day, one for her daughter and one for her son. And then she was actually doing a family thing with her new boyfriend at the time and their 2 kids as well. And they hired their own ski instructor. This witness is going to tell us what he said happened with the ski instructor next.
He came up to the left of me. And then he starts yelling at Terry, and he's like, "What'd you do? What did you do?" And Terry's not moving. He's just not. He's not moving. His face down, and he keeps saying, what did you do? But then it just kept getting worse and worse. It kept getting higher and higher. And it's like, what did you do? And so then I ended up, cause he was down a little bit lower than I was. So I just moved a few feet in front of him. So he was looking, so be yelling right at me. And then when I did that, he stopped yelling at him.
So far, this witness seems okay. Although I can tell he does seem really, really, really nervous, which I get it. I'd be the same way too, especially if you're like testifying in front of a bunch of people in a room. And then on top of that, you knew that it was being streamed on Law and Crime and Court TV and all that stuff.
She ended up taking off and going down. From where she was standing, she probably went down about 15, 20 feet.
Okay.
And
Stop.
And she came around and stopped. Then Eric said, Gwyneth Paltrow just took out your buddy. And
I'm sorry, he said what?
he said Gwyneth Paltrow just took out your buddy.
Oh, your buddy took out Gwyneth Paltrow? What did Christensen
Your
say?
Honor, let's make sure the witness is testifying and not the lawyer.
And this is the part where the entire courtroom is confused because in the opening statement, the plaintiff said Eric Christensen yelled, "Hey, your buddy just took out Gwyneth Paltrow."
Was he accusing Terry of taking out Gwyneth Paltrow too?
No.
Okay, all right.
After the accident, the Deer Valley ski instructor filled out this accident report. So let's go over it really quick. It says, "Did you witness the accident? No. If not, how did you become aware of the incident? I saw the immediate aftermath. Was ski patrol called or first aid visited? No. Name a patroller. But a patroller came by to check on everyone. Student returned to skiing. Any other guests or employees at the scene or relationship to the student?" I think it says Kelsey Oaks. She was the other ski instructor. Additional comments. First thing male ski stated was that she appeared right in front of her, cross it out, him, thus admitting that he was the uphill skier. She never saw him because he came in from behind. Filled out by Eric Christensen.
Now, did another Deer Valley person come by while you were there?
No, I never saw him.
But in the incident report, it says that a ski patroller did stop by and ask if everyone was okay. So we're having contradicting stories already.
Terry finally started to move, and then his skis are out like this and his face is down, and so he needed to kind of get his skis back, and so he ended up lifting his right ski up, I believe, and then moving it to the other side so his skis would be parallel. And if I would have been thinking straight, I would have taken his skis off for him. And so then he gets his skis, so his face is downhill and his skis are uphill. And so then he slowly is just trying to move around and get his skis so they're downhill, so that way, you know, he can get up. Well, when he finally started to kind of move around a little bit, he was still out of it. First thing he started to talk about was he just says my ribs. He was just complaining about his ribs.
Did he apologize to Ms. Paltrow like has been represented?
No. Before he left, Eric pulled Terry up, and then once Terry was on his feet,
How did he pull him up?
Terry's skis were downhill, and so he went and he put his skis next to Terry's, and so his skis couldn't slide. And then he grabbed his hand and yanked him up. And then once he was on his feet, then Eric just took off. He bolted too. And so then we start going down the hill, and he's really having a hard time going down the hill. And I mean, he's snow plowing and he's bent over, and he looks like he's in a lot of pain. And then I'm like, Terry, let's stop. And so he ends up pulling over.
At this point, Ramon says they were able to flag down a Deer Valley Resort employee who subsequently was able to get a ski patrol. The ski patrol bought a toboggan, which is something that I learned recently. It's a sled where you can put injured people on there, and then they can just take a nice little ride down the hill. So at this point, Terry and his friends are at the nurse station, and there's not really much the nurse can do. She just tells them, like, hey, you know, if you end up throwing up, you might have to go to ER because you probably have a concussion.
And the nurse actually told me, she says, if he starts throwing up, take him directly to the ER because he's got a concussion.
Now we're in the cross-examination by Owens, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's lawyer, and he's going to make a clarification that was confusing everyone earlier.
Did you once, in that deposition, say Eric Christensen told you that Gwyneth took Terry out?
No.
Did you say that today?
No. What I meant to say, I get dyslexic when I get nervous. No, he said that your buddy just took out Gwyneth.
All right. I was a little confused by some of the questioning. Okay.
So, it's okay. Nervous. I don't think it's like he's being inconsistent or anything, or he's like up there in the stand lying. It just, seems like a nervous guy right now.
Did you correct him?
No.
Wouldn't that be the perfect time to say, "You are incorrect, sir"?
I wasn't. He was yelling, and I didn't want to get into an argument with him. And didn't want to even.
You had.
Owens makes a good point, but you know what? Sometimes people just don't like confrontation. So next part, we're going to get into something that was really important that Owens mentioned in his opening statement. And you know what? Honestly, the plaintiff, they should have gotten ahead of it and they should have addressed it as well. But we're going to talk about the evidence, or like Owens said, the lack of evidence. There's an email thread where there's a GoPro video that was mentioned on Terry's side of the family. And Owens is like, where is this GoPro footage? Why is it missing? Let's talk about that right now.
No, there was no video.
Did you see that Terry, I should keep saying Mr. Sanderson, so recorded something from his friend and eyewitness and sent it to his daughters? Do you know what he's talking about there?
I have no idea.
You were his friend that was there and claimed to be an eyewitness, true?
Yes.
You're the only one.
Yes, I don't know. I believe so.
So something Terry Sanderson sent to his daughters said, "I'm famous.
Videos.
Here's what happened from my friend and eyewitness." And then something. You don't know what that is.
No, I have no idea.
His daughter responds something to the effect of, "I can't believe this is all on GoPro." Do you know what that's referencing?
I have no idea.
Based on what Owens is saying right now, at this point, I'm like, wait a second. Did this guy have a GoPro footage cam and he sent the footage? And now he's saying that, like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God. Now, if this is true, I can't believe any of his testimony. But we're going to come back to this GoPro footage comment many times in the future. So just keep an open mind about it. But just remember something about GoPro footage. Next, Owens is now going to show that this witness may have made some inconsistent statements.
That's your testimony, is that she was only there 3 or 4 minutes.
Yes.
Do you remember in your deposition, it was you who said 8 to 10 minutes? Keep going. Just start reading.
It says maybe 10 minutes and then that's blocked off. And so it doesn't.
Line 6, is it 8 to 10 minutes? And what was your answer on line 8? Are you reading this?
Yes, I am.
What does line 8 say, the 3 words there?
I don't. Okay, it says about 8 minutes.
Thank you. Did you tell me she was not wearing a helmet?
I'm not sure. I don't remember what she was wearing.
Do you remember previously testifying that you knew she was not wearing a helmet?
I'm not sure what she was wearing. If you look at the deposition.
Sir, listen to my question.
I'm sorry.
Did you previously tell me under oath that she was not wearing a helmet?
I can't answer that.
And why can't you?
Because
why can't you tell me that whether you previously told me that?
That she was not wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
I wasn't really paying attention with what she was wearing.
She was not wearing a helmet. I mean, did you tell me that previously?
I don't think so.
Oh boy.
When I questioned you about 1.5 years ago, you said she was not wearing a helmet. Do you remember that? Yes.
And your answer was yes.
Yes.
Okay. And she was not wearing goggles either. True?
I can't answer that.
Sir, did you read your deposition before this?
Yes.
Like how many days ago?
Yes, I didn't know what she was. I couldn't remember what she was wearing.
Can you? So is your best memory she was not wearing a helmet? What was your answer?
Yes.
And she was not wearing goggles?
And she was not wearing goggles, no.
And I said, is that right? And you said?
Yes.
And she was not wearing any facial covering?
No.
Is that your testimony? That she had no goggles, no helmet, and nothing covering her face? Is that your testimony today?
I can't answer that.
All right. You previously testified under oath. True?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're done for a minute. Thank you.
There's another inconsistent statement as well, but I just can't figure if there's just some sort of weird miscommunication or maybe I'm just missing something. But initially, when he was talking to the plaintiff's lawyer, he said that Terry was spread out like this.
Face down. So he's kind of spread eagle, and he goes face down, and Gwyneth's on the top.
And then it changes the story to Terry had his arms at his side and then agreed that his arms were spread like this. I don't know. There must be some weird disconnect or something. You guys tell me.
Is this your testimony? She plowed into him, and he went spread eagle, head down. True?
Yes.
Hands out, skis out.
Yes.
His skis stayed on?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury where Terry's arms were when he went down?
Oh, they were by his side.
Not flung out like this?
No.
Okay.
You testified that Terry, after the collision, was spread eagle. Did you not?
When he was laying on the ground.
Right. That's what we're talking about.
Yes, when he was laying on the ground, he was spread eagle.
That's as much as I think I want to say, except we're trying to figure out where he was.
It's not looking too great. At this point, the jury could think, is Ramon really credible? Does he have good memory? Or can they just attribute to, hey, this guy's just really nervous right now, and maybe he just doesn't remember what happened because it was so long ago, and he didn't read his deposition to refresh his memory, I guess. All right, let's hear more from Ramon.
You're colorblind.
Yes.
And you don't know the color, the outfit, for instance, Ms. Paltrow was wearing that day, true?
True.
And you don't know the color that Terry was wearing that day, true?
True.
And when they collided, it looked like one person going down. Is that true?
Yes.
You were on the other end of this courtroom about that far, true?
Yes.
But you were just focused on Terry?
I was focused on. Yes, I was focused on Terry.
Only on Terry, at the top of the hill. I'm just going to watch Terry. Is that your...
No, I no.
Okay, you're focused on other things too.
Yes.
All right. You didn't watch where Gwyneth came from, true?
True.
And you didn't watch where Terry came from.
True.
Did you ever see any other instructor come by?
No.
So if Mr. Christiansen says ski patrol actually came by and said, are things okay? You deny that?
Yes, I never saw a ski patrol come by.
Did you ever ask Mr. Christiansen, hey, I think we ought to get a toboggan here?
No.
In fact, Terry was standing at some point, true?
True.
And that was before the ski instructor left.
True.
So that the entire time he was out cold, he was spread eagle on the mountain?
Yes.
And did you do anything for him?
No.
If your meetup buddy was out cold for, say, roughly 2 minutes, well, why would you just stand there and not really say anything, especially if he was unresponsive? His face was flat down in the snow. So initially I was like, oh, why wouldn't you turn your friend over? But then I remembered, oh, maybe you shouldn't turn or touch people. Maybe they have broken necks or something like that. But maybe get a little bit closer, see if they're breathing, maybe check a pulse. So to me, it strikes me, it is pretty odd that he would just stand there and not really do anything. He would just ask, hey, Gwyneth Paltrow, are you okay? Are you okay? And then if the friend wasn't responsive, well, wouldn't you want to flag down an employee or like, hey, we need help, or hey, get ski patrol here or something like that? Because the other side is debating, well, Terry did not actually lose consciousness. He was fine. Our next witness is Teresa Carlene, and she dated Terry about 18 months before the accident happened. And they actually broke up 6 months after the accident.
We dated for in a serious relationship for about 18 months prior to the accident, and then he was a goer. I had a lot of trouble keeping up with him. He's about 5 years older than I am, and he was definitely had a lot of energy, a lot of joyful. He was just a fun, loving, wanted to play and have a good time in life. He was very energetic, very ambitious.
And now she describes Terry after the accident.
Just little things that he would try and do. He felt like he was not capable of getting things done like he was used to, And I know he'd spend a lot of time on his laptop, and he was very involved with the Fidelity and his finances and different things. He would, get involved with his broker and talk about things, and they would do things on the laptops, and they would. I think he was real discouraged, and that's where he was putting that across too. That he just felt real discouraged with what he was trying to do. I think he was struggling with that and trying to figure out what was going on. And like I say, Terry hides things really well. As far as I think he didn't want to let on that he was struggling, but at the same time, being his partner, I think he would let on a little bit more that he was having some issues with things. The relationship was falling apart, and I was taking on some of that blame and wanting to find out why. And I thought I had met the love of my life when I met Terry. Terry was a joyful person, and his joy was gone. He didn't feel the joy anymore. But he became agitated easily. Terry was not a man that I ever knew to be aggravated, agitated, and he became more so in that regard afterwards. He was the dog. My dog was, she always would go sit on his chair in the living room, on the back of his chair. And I remember him coming out one day, and he pushed her off the chair and yelled at her and scolded her and said, why are you on my chair? Get away. And little things like that just didn't seem right. He changed.
Throughout these testimonies, we're going to hear from different witnesses whether they thought that it was Terry's first account that he knew what happened to him, or whether he relied on the account of Ramon.
It was your understanding that Mr. Sanderson did not know who hit him at the time that you first spoke with him about the accident. Is that correct?
As I recall.
And he was also uncertain about what happened. Is that right?
He lost consciousness. That's all I knew was, So I don't know that other than losing consciousness and going on perhaps what someone else said.
Okay.
Our next witness is Dr. Wendell Gibby. He is a neuroradiologist.
In terms of the imaging that I was asked to review, there were some abnormal findings on the chest X-ray. There were abnormal findings on his MRI of the brain.
So the author of this report, Whitney Smith, wrote a supplement.
All right, let's read this together. Whitney Smith was a ski patrol. She was not with Gwyneth Paltrow's party, not with Eric Christensen, but she worked at Deer Valley Ski Resort, and she was a ski patrol that helped out Terry and his party. So let's read what it says in the supplemental report. I recall that upon arriving on scene on Bandana at the bridge, I found the patient, Terry, standing on the right side of the run in his skis. The mountain host that had radioed patrol was above doing traffic control. A friend of Terry's was also present, a large man, blue jacket, black pants, dark hair, hereby referred to as large male friend, LMF. Terry said that he was uncertain what happened. LMF told Terry that a woman had struck him from behind, knocking him down. LMF stated he believed the woman had been Gwyneth Paltrow. So a couple things here. We have another person saying Terry said that he was uncertain what happened. Because before, we're trying to figure out what happened. Did Terry actually know what happened to him? Or did he have no idea and he was just basically going off what Ramon was saying? LMF told Terry that a woman had struck him from behind, knocking him down. So this doesn't look good because it really doesn't seem like Terry knew what the heck happened to him based on this. LMF stated that he believed the woman had been Gwyneth Paltrow. I asked if anyone had spoken to the woman. LMF said he had asked her if she was all right. He said she had told him she was fine. So this again contradicts what LMF, aka Mr. Ramon, was saying, how Gwyneth Paltrow didn't respond to him when he kept asking, are you okay? Are you all right? And he was like, yeah, she didn't say anything at all to me. She had told him that she was fine and then skied away. During assessment, transport, and time at first aid, LMF continued to say that the woman involved in the collision with Gwyneth Paltrow. At Empire First Aid, we were met by 3 other from Terry's skiing group, a blonde woman, a man, and Debbie. I recall LMF reiterating to the group his identification of the woman to have been Gwyneth Paltrow. Debbie left to retrieve the car from the snowpack, and the other 3 friends met a while later to continue skiing. I stayed and monitored Terry until Debbie arrived with the car and took him to the clinic. I believe the other party, LMF, was Craig. So this report again reinforces that Craig did believe that Gwyneth Paltrow took out Terry, but at the same time, there are some inconsistencies with their story. First, again, with, whether or not Terry had actually knew firsthand that he was the one that was struck, or did he rely on Craig? The plaintiff brings up this exhibit to the witness, and I guess it helps both sides. But however, this supplement was written 3 weeks after the incident. So can we really rely on whether or not Whitney remembered things correctly? We were wondering, how are Terry's bones? Does he have poor bones, good bones? Well, the doctor answers right here.
Terry was 69 at the time, male, had very normal looking bone density, so certainly not elderly or osteoporotic. And in order to break, essentially snap 4 ribs, would require a substantial amount of force.
Here is an x-ray of Terry's ribs.
Here, there's one here.
And then additionally, what they're trying to say is that Gwyneth Paltrow hit Terry so hard, landed on top of him, and that's how he cracked his rib and got a concussion.
What I believe happened is that he was struck from the left side, and that forced him into the ground. It's also been the testimony here that Ms. Paltrow was on top of him at some point, so the combined weight of the 2 individuals slamming into the ground caused the fracture and the head injury. I don't think it would be plausible that if he were running into her that he would have broken the ribs on the side of his chest. He likely would have had his arms extended, he would have protected himself, he would have had knees, arms, etc. in front of his chest. And so he might have had other injuries. He could have broken a leg or an arm or wrist or something like that. But
And there are some doubters out there that don't believe that Terry even had a concussion. They're like, wait a second, Terry, you're like 69 years old. Maybe you're just getting old, and that's why you're not thinking the way that you do. Maybe you have dementia.
he did not have symptoms of dementia. He was a very bright, active, engaged person. He did not have difficulty with urinary incontinence or, urinary problems. So
this is the cross-examination by Gwyneth Paltrow's lawyer, and they're going to try to prove that, well, Terry, he was the same after the accident. You said that he had mood changes, mood swings, more irritated. Well, we're going to prove that he already had that before it happened.
There's also testimony that Mr. Sanderson was domineering and emotionally and verbally abusive to Jenny and her mother, Tana. Do you recall reading anything about that?
No, I do recall some testimony about him being angry with the man that was having an affair with his wife, and that was atypical for him. I think he was, punched him or something, but that was listed as very atypical in Terry's behavior.
did you hear any testimony about Mr. Sanderson becoming frustrated if his expectations weren't met? And this is referring to his children.
No, I don't recall that.
What about testimony that he has always been easily frustrated and quick to anger?
Additionally, they're going to say, well, Terry, he's already had brain issues. They had MRIs of him, and there's already been issues with his brain from previous incidents.
So is that, are you saying that you were not aware of a 2009 MRI? Just a CT?
No, I believe I have that MRI. I think it was sent to me.
Is it true that you have no opinion about whether those prior images are different than the post-accident images because you haven't looked at them? You hadn't looked at them at the time that you provided your opinions in this case. Is that right?
That's correct. I have looked at them, but at the time, I had not reviewed them side by side, I should say. And that's because they hadn't been provided to us.
But that was not me that was providing them to you, correct?
I don't know.
You had not reviewed prior imaging prior to the accident. I'm not asking about reports, just the images themselves.
I had not seen the images.
Okay, thank you. And did you see in that review a record just a few weeks before the ski collision where Mr. Sanderson reported that he was getting old all of a sudden, or felt like he was getting old all of a sudden?
I did see that.
You saw that?
So Terry goes to the doctor a couple weeks before the ski accident and then says, I'm feeling old all of a sudden. However, when you take it into context, I think it's kind of a wash.
A document that references this gotten old all of a sudden, so you can read it and put it into context. So
it says weight gain. Thinks eating too much and not as much exercise. Thinks he's gotten old all of a sudden. Does not think depressed. Mood is good. Just not doing the things he used to. Seems to be consumed with paperwork, cleaning things out. Thinks that he will start skiing and reinstate his gym membership. Seems to be referring to his weight gain and inactivity.
Terry's next witness is Sam Goldstein, who is a psychologist. He was the one that did neuropsychological tests on him.
We did a full battery of neuropsychological tests looking at his abilities. So abilities are defined as those innate differences among us. Some people have better memory, better speed of processing, better attention or organization. I looked at his knowledge. What does he know? And finally, I looked at his skill. And skill is a verb, skillfully doing things, which he was having trouble with. It's not a noun. It's not. And the tests aren't used to prove or disprove brain injury. They're not capable of doing that. They're designed to look at how he functions relative to people in the general population, or how he might function relative to people with his academic and vocational background. And he'd been tested a number of times before that his problems were more behavioral, emotional regulation, frontotemporal kinds of problems. I didn't expect them to show up on the neuropsychological testing.
Now, this testimony, I feel like this is a paid expert, by the way. I feel like he says something that, not good for Team Terry.
Confabulation. First of all, define for the jury confabulation. And I'll be likely to see that.
Well, some people call that honest lying,
Okay.
meaning you're not telling the truth, but you really believe you are.
I'd like to see that with Terry.
You could very well see that with Terry, yes.
Is that a frontal lobe problem?
It's a frontal lobe problem.
Terry's going to be testifying, and I just feel like this comment right here is it's going to make the jury doubt his testimony. Actually, could even make us doubt that maybe Terry thinks he's telling the truth about the accident when really maybe that's not what really happened. But, at least they say this.
What you will see is a good-looking gentleman of 76 years of age. He will be dressed appropriately. His hygiene will be good. He will present himself as very normal. He clearly, from some of the things he will say, it'll reflect an intelligent person. That's what you will see. What you will hear is a challenge in a variety of ways in his ability to stay on task, to answer the questions, not because he's evasive, but because he's obsessive in his thinking.
How about irrelevant?
Irrelevant in the sense that you'll ask him a question and his answer will be unresponsive.
Here's a cross-examination.
Given that you were focused on emotional regulation, record, I believe, from 2009, in which a provider mentioned that the patient, Mr. Sanderson, mentioned that he had noticed he was easy to anger. Do you remember seeing records like that?
Yes.
And that he got angry at his girlfriend's children?
Yes.
Okay. Another record from 2009, the patient mentioned difficulty with anger management. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Report from a Deer Valley person who responded, the first kind of responder to Mr. Sanderson, Whitney Smith. I think we'll hear from her later in the trial. That there was a box there in that report that said concussion, and it was not checked. Did you see that?
Correct.
Okay. And did you see anything in her report where she said he lost consciousness?
No.
Okay.
This next part I think is really interesting because we will hear multiple testimonies talking about Terry's obsessiveness with this case.
Okay, so he felt like he was abandoned on the slope, and he kind of obsessed about that. Is that correct?
Correct. And what drives it at that point is probably a combination of things, not just his perception that he was skied into, and then the person who skied into him lacked remorse or didn't support him, or I think that was kind of his initial view of it. But over time, his perception of his dysfunction in his everyday life became a much bigger issue. I think if the person who allegedly skied into him apologized, I don't think it would solve his problems today.
Okay. Did you testify previously that from his view, because this person skied into him and didn't have the respect to stop and help him or acknowledge the problem, and as time has gone on, he's become increasingly obsessed with this entire issue?
Correct.
When Mr. Sanderson has spoken to you about the accident, has he discussed whether his understanding of it comes mainly from Mr. Ramon or whether he has specific memories of it himself?
I haven't had that conversation with him other than he telling me every time I've spoken to him over the last 3 years that he just remembers somebody standing over him screaming at him.
You know, if you watch the trial, you might be wondering, where is Terry Sanders? Why is he not in court for his own court case?
You and I had a discussion about whether Terry should be in the courtroom during this trial, did we not?
Correct. My advice was that he shouldn't be in the courtroom.
Why?
I think he would have trouble listening to people say things about him that he disagreed with.
How does he take hearing criticism of himself?
Not well.
And now again, we're going to revisit Terry's head injury that he had when he was 10 years old.
Head injury when he was 10 years old?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
But after he was 10 years old, he functioned fairly well, did he not? Throughout his entire life until the ski accident.
He functioned like an accomplished individual who obtained advanced degrees, worked at a high level of white-collar work, was successful in business, married a number of times, had children.
Our next witness is Dr. Fong. And Dr. Fong is a neuropsychologist who runs a clinic with over 70 staff members. And she essentially runs something called a boot camp, where she tries to help Terry and she tries to help him get better. I believe she spends about 32 hours with Terry for an entire week, trying to help him, sat down with him, did some information gathering. Terry did some self-reporting, and she wanted to see how the accident affected him and tried to do multiple things to try to treat him.
Terry came to my clinic and he worked so hard. He really, gave his best effort, and he did notice, and we noticed some definite improvements. But talking to him now, knowing where he is now, it is still showing clearly that he's still struggling. 32 hours of therapy, right? He was an ideal patient. I got to see him every day while he was here in treatment and got to follow up with him and connect with him. These were quite significantly affecting his life. I mean, it was affecting his personal life, his family relationships, his friendships, his ability to, have self-confidence. He was further isolating. He just it affected him on so many levels.
And things, of course, get really combative during the cross-examination. Dr. Fong says when she sat down with Terry, she did like a clinical interview. She went through medical histories and all that stuff. And she had Terry do a self-report. However, in the cross-examination, the lawyer is like, well, you didn't have his entire medical record. And she's like, well, I didn't need it. And he's like, well, why wouldn't you need everything? And she's like, well, that's not how I usually do things. And he's like, well, especially if you knew this was going to go to litigation, why wouldn't you want everything to make sure you're thorough and that you know exactly what you're doing? She's like, well, typically for, when I deal with patients, I don't need their entire medical stack of records. I only need the relevant information and things like that. And they're like, well, there's relevant information. Like there's a 2009 MRI. You didn't take a look at that? It's like, oh, no, I didn't have that. Or like, oh, there's a neuropsychological evaluation or something. There was like 3 of them. How come you didn't have access to those? And she was like, well, honestly, to be honest, like I didn't need any of that. All I can do is evaluate him how I see him now. And then based off of that, I just wanted to focus on treating him.
That I met with Terry, I sat down with him and we went over what we call a clinical interview. And that is information gathering. I'm trying to assess what happened to him. I want to know what his symptoms were like. I wanted to hear about the injury that occurred. And so it's a really good way to gather information and to get a really good history of the patient. I'll ask about psychiatric history. I'll ask about some prior medical history. I'll ask about some prior concussions as well. And so it allows me to assess what's going on and to then have a clinical diagnosis based on that clinical interview.
I haven't heard you explain why you can say that Terry's findings are clearly connected to a post-concussive syndrome as against developing Alzheimer's, or he has multiple things listed here. I could go through them, but you get the point.
I'm using my 18 years of expertise as a clinical neuropsychologist and my expertise treating concussions, using self-report measures, clinical interviews, using different in-house assessments to determine that. The reason I said that I believe it came from that accident was because, again, I'm using his report that prior to that accident, he was functioning fine.
Just to be clear, you did not ask for prior medical records and go through those to see what there might be in Mr. Sanderson's past, correct?
That is not correct.
How is that not correct? At your deposition, you made it really clear that you did not look at prior medical records.
Well, but I did not go off nothing for that. I asked him about
I didn't,
his medical history.
Dr. Fong, I did not say that you went off nothing. I asked for records so that you could be as precise as you can be, that you're gathering from him so that you can feel confident about the results that you offer, correct?
No, and see, this is where I think you're trying to miscategorize me, James. I didn't treat Terry any differently than I treat any other patient that comes to my clinic, whether they're in litigation or not. All my job is to testify as to what I did with him, the treatment that I had with him, and I did just as well with Terry's information that I do with the 18 patients that I have outside my door right now. So in the cases where there are medical records to be seen, I will see them. So I am very, very busy. I do not have time to pour over every single medical record. I take the patient as they come. If they provide me with some, that's fantastic. But my job is to get to work, get this patient better, and to move forward from that point.
I'm not in the medical field or anything, but initially I did think it sounded kind of iffy. But as she explained more, I was like, you know what? I get it. Because I remember going to the doctor's office as well. It's like when I go to a doctor's office, I don't bring a whole stack of medical records, right? Usually it's like a referral. They'll have some information that they send over. Or if I go to a new doctor, I'll just bring relevant information like certain MRI scans or stuff like that. So I could see it both ways, especially since this was a year after the accident happened. And Terry was probably just interested in getting treatment. The lawsuit wasn't filed until 3 years after the accident. Throughout the trial, Terry's going to be criticized over and over again by the defense for traveling so much. They're saying that like, oh, your life was so bad after the accident. Well, look at you. You traveled to so many different countries. You know, it acted like your life was fine. But we do end up getting some important information from Dr. Fong about maybe why Terry was traveling so much.
Part of what he said that he missed and part of what gave him so much joy was traveling. I encouraged him to try to get back to doing things that he loved. I did caution him that he should not travel alone because of his memory issues and other problem-solving issues.
Our next witness is going to be Polly Sanderson Gresham. And Terry has 3 daughters. This is the middle daughter who's going to be testifying. She's going to talk about how her dad was before the accident, how he was after the accident, and some incidents that happened that she thought was peculiar.
He was always just a big cheerleader, knew what was going on in their lives. He helped me install the irrigation in my garden beds, and I had a leaky sink. Anything that had not working, electrical that I was having issues with, you know, he knew where my husband's toolbox was, and he was always willing to help me figure things out.
Tell us how you learned about the ski accident.
I wasn't sure if it was my dad that called me or my sister that called me.
Okay. Could have been Carlene, maybe, possibly?
It could have been, for sure. That he felt he had broken some ribs. That was painful. And I think the words were, you know, he got his bell rung.
Did you ever find out at any time that Gwyneth Paltrow was involved?
I don't believe that night. You know, directly after the crash, I would say a good year and a half, I felt like, I don't want to say stupid, that's not the word, but like his processing speeds, you know, like the effort that it took. Definitely when we were in person for Hope's graduation, I felt like, wow. There was a time when he's sitting in a chair by my window. I almost expected drool to be coming out of his mouth because first of all, he wasn't engaged with anybody. He had kind of taken himself to a remote corner. And I just felt, that was my first real kind of slap in the face of like, something's terribly wrong. Remind him that, because before he could have lots going on, and now it's very A to B. A to B, don't throw in a C or a D, right? Because then we're gone completely. So how do we simplify, you know, and just this task, just A to B? Yeah, very much so. I have a memory. My younger sister, Jenny, and I decided it was time to help clean out my grandparents' house. I could tell that was really weighing on my dad's mind. Like, I need to go take care of that house. And so, and I don't know what the conversation or the disagreement was about, but he was saying, fuck you. He just kept repeating that over and over again. And my younger sister...
Anything like that in your life?
No.
Any relationship like that with your dad?
No, I've never felt scared of my dad.
During the cross-examination with Paltrow's lawyers, this is where we start talking about Jenny more. Jenny is the youngest daughter. And the reason why Jenny's so important is because Jenny, her experience of her dad is very different than what her 2 older sisters have experienced. Now, Jenny has about like a 9 years age gap with the eldest daughter, about a 6 years age gap with the middle child. Let's go and listen to what they have to say about Jenny.
Did Jenny ever tell you, like, your dad used to verbally abuse her and your mom for 10 years?
Jenny and I have a very close relationship.
Just a yes or no, please. Do you agree that you paint quite a different picture of your dad before than Jenny does?
So my sister Jenny
Yes or no,
has
please.
mental disability.
I just have yes or no questions. And would you describe your parents' marriage as a good marriage when you left 6 years before their...
They were in the middle of a divorce, not an amiable one.
Have you talked to Jenny about this trial?
She knew I was coming.
Jenny committed in writing to attend this trial. and then, let me finish my question, and then pulled out.
Oh, she is not planning on attending.
Do you know that there was a point in time when she committed to attend this trial? Are you
I was not aware.
Or that she was planning to attend the trial? Did you or anyone you know attempt to dissuade her from attending this trial?
No, she felt like it would be a financial hardship. I said I would be happy to pay for her airplane ticket if she wanted to come.
I did too. Do you know that?
That's totally irrelevant. I think.
So did you weigh in on that, Jenny? I don't think it's good for you to attend the trial.
No, not at all. I honor people's journey, and so that's entirely up to her.
We then turn our heads to the email about the GoPro. Let's see what she has to say about that.
There's been a lot of speculation trying to figure out what that was. The fact that it's a meetup link, it tells me probably something from the day that he was skiing, he had gone with a meetup group.
Let me interrupt, because all I'm asking is, do you recall what it was if you clicked on this?
I do not recall precisely.
Okay. You think you clicked on it and nothing came up?
Correct, that's what I think.
Did you say that in your deposition anywhere?
I don't believe I was.
We asked you about 100 questions.
Yes, I did review it.
And did you make a correction? Like, actually, I tried to click on it and nothing came up. Did you ever do that?
It's just a vague recollection. No, I do not believe.
Yeah. So
initially, I was primed to thinking that there was something huge going on with this missing GoPro video. And the fact that she said, I don't remember it, I don't know what happened to it, I don't know anything about it, that to me was very suspicious. But let's come back to this.
I do not recall what this link was.
And do you have any idea where this link went? The link of the most important piece of evidence that could be presented at trial today?
It looks like it's somewhere out there in the cyber sphere.
I also do want to mention that this is before I check, but they keep talking about the link. Well, actually, the link is still live. And if you make a Meetup account, you log in on there, the link is literally just a picture that we've seen in evidence before. It isn't linked to a GoPro footage or anything like that. So did Owens not do their research? I'm assuming they did, or were they trying to, rile it all up and get us all excited about this GoPro footage when they knew it wasn't really anything? I also want to mention, I believe the sister, because when you click on the link, it actually does take you to nothing. It forces you to make a Meetup account. If you don't have a Meetup account, you can't view what's in it. So, okay, seems credible to me.
Essentially turned off and he lost his right eye. Is that fair?
He lost some vision in his right eye, and what are the odds for somebody that's spent a lifetime committed to eye health, right?
Okay, more information about Terry. He's blind in his right eye.
40 years ago.
40 years ago, he's been wearing hearing aids.
Yeah.
And
okay, has hearing aids.
Okay, did you ever know your dad to minimize other stressors and focus on something sort of obsessively?
Not pre-accident, post-accident, yes.
Okay, how about that he would hyper-focus on a problem without dealing with broader issues that were affecting that?
I would say he does have a tendency to hyper-focus.
And that was pre-collision, right?
Yes, way more so after the accident.
So again, another person to say that he gets hyperfixated, very obsessed about things, especially after the accident. I'm thinking Terry did get a brain concussion for real. And due to that, he became really obsessed with this case. Now, whether or not he caused the accident or she caused the accident, well, let's keep listening and then I'll let you know what I'm thinking. Now, during this testimony, they're going to talk about a slew of health problems that Terry has as an old person, and then also how Terry had a neuropsychological assessment with the VA, and these assessments showed that he was functioning above average. But Terry's other doctors were saying, well, just because he's scoring above average, well, after the accident, he was probably scoring even higher. And because of the concussion, it brought his functioning from here to here. So he could still suffer from an impairment.
And then, in addition, he went to Peru and walked the Golden Trail. Do you remember, like, Machu Picchu? He went and visited Machu Picchu. And then he floated down the Amazon. This is early 2017. So about 1 year after the collision. And then Costa Rica, he did a zip line also the year after the accident. Do you recall this?
So Terry went on a lot of trips, but after hearing Dr. Fung's testimony, well, they met in February 2017. And early 2017 seems to be when Terry started traveling. And I believe that when he did travel, though, it's not like he was traveling alone. He always made sure to have a companion with him. Because again, remember, guys, like if you are sick, if there's something going on with you, some people, they still try to get back to normal things. And Terry, for him, he wanted to go back and travel and he wanted to experience life, even though he was suffering from this concussion that was messing with his mental functioning.
Do you know why Terry is obsessed with the case? Do you know why?
My dad is very principled, and I think not only was he injured, but I think this accident really hurt in a way that it hurt him in a way that somebody would just not care for him when he was injured. I think that his brain injury, he really does become consumed with things, and I think feeling like righting this wrong for him has really kind of consumed him.
And now we're going to hear a little bit more about Jenny, her younger sister.
So let me begin by just saying she's one of my favorite people. Probably a young adult. She was diagnosed with some mental disabilities. She is on disability now.
Objection, just a minute. Objection is sustained. The answer is stricken and the jury should disregard the response.
It kind of comes back to Mr. Owens when I spoke with him earlier, and he was saying, so are you telling the truth or is she telling the truth? And I had a hard time answering that because I can speak to my own experience, but I am not in her lived experience with her, who she is, and I have not lived her life and her experience. I know her to be truthful. I've never heard her lie. So if she's communicating that to you, that is her understanding of the experience.
Is she telling the truth when she believes that your dad would exaggerate for money and celebrity?
She would be telling her truth.
Is she telling the truth when she says he's deceptive?
She's telling her truth.
Is she telling her truth when she says he will get whatever monetary benefit he can in business, even if it's dishonest?
Not true.
I don't know that to be true. Again, this is Jenny's supposition.
Is she telling the truth when she describes your dad as anal retentive?
I'm thinking that word came up with my older sister too, because she brought up that word and I said, I don't even know what anal retentive means. Like I said, I don't know Jenny to be untruthful. I think she sees the world in a curious, different way.
Our next witness is going to be Dr. Richard Boehm, who is a neurologist. He met with Terry on April 28, 2021, so years after the crash. I think after 5 years afterwards. Dr. Boehm, I think, is one of the most important testimonies for Terry. And it's really unfortunate for Terry that Dr. Boehm was unable to show up as a live witness, because I feel like sometimes when you're a jury and you're listening to video deposition, or if you're like me, sometimes video depositions, there are things that kind of just go over your head because you tend not to listen as much.
That first impact did not result in rib fractures or concussion. It was his contact with the ground that resulted in the injuries that we see. When you do the calculation, it turns out to be about 4,000 newtons of impact force to the ribs, which is enough to cause a rib fracture. But usually people that just fall to the ground, do not suffer rib fractures. And the reason being is that there's not enough energy being transferred to the rib. It takes something else, and the something else would be someone falling with them on top of them.
So Dr. Boehm is saying that in this scenario, Terry falling alone wouldn't have fractured his ribs. It's if someone landed on top of him. Well, at this point, I was thinking, well, okay, what if Terry did hit Gwyneth Paltrow from behind and they somehow rotated in such a way that she still landed on top of him?
So you did consider the possibility that Terry could have hit Ms. Paltrow?
Well, yes, I considered a number of different scenarios. Terry Sanderson striking Ms. Paltrow from behind and then rotating in such a way to the ground. Could that account for the rib injuries, and vice versa? Ms. Paltrow striking Mr. Sanderson from behind and rotating, in such a way. It takes a half a second to fall to the ground. And to rotate in such a way that you strike your ribs onto the ground over your elbow would indicate that, let's say that Mr. Sanderson struck Ms. Paltrow from behind and rotated, and she fell on top of him as a result of the rotational effect. Mr. Sanderson would have had to generate the initial rotational force to cause that rotation in order for him to land beneath Ms. Paltrow. Okay, and then in so doing, he would have landed on his back. Now keep in mind that if you're going to rotate 180 degrees in less than half a second, that's basically a rotational rate of between 360 and 400 degrees per second. Now, having dealt with athletes all my life, I've dealt with swimmers or divers. Divers have a difficult time even generating that type of rotational rate. They do their complex dives. So Mr. Sanderson certainly would not be able to generate that rotational component and land underneath Ms. Paltrow. Then vice versa, if Ms. Paltrow struck Mr. Sanderson from behind and rotated around, then that would have been at an even more increased rotational rate for Mr. Sanderson to be underneath Ms. Paltrow for those ribs to fracture. And then again, more likely than not, he would have landed on his back, not his side. And then the last consideration is they both have their skis on. To be able to do that type of rotation, you would expect skis to come off, and they didn't. So that was kind of the analysis I did with regards to rotational effects.
So the audio sucks, and I'm not sure if the jury even caught any of that. I certainly didn't really catch it the first time because I had it listening in the background. It was on speaker. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. Gwyneth Paltrow does testify, and she does say that she landed on Terry, which is why I'm thinking about, okay, well, let's say that he hit her from behind. How the heck did she end up landing on him? Oh, maybe they both rotated together, right? What this expert is saying, if Terry had hit Gwyneth Paltrow from the back, well, he doesn't think it's possible they would have been able to rotate that much. But even if they did rotate, well, Terry would have landed on his back. Now, I want to know from Terry's testimony and other testimonies, how did Terry land? So far, all we've heard is from Ramon, who said that he saw Terry face down. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Gwyneth says, what Terry says, how Terry landed. Was it on his back, his side, or was it face down like what Ramon said? For the most part, I was leaning more towards Gwen's side, but upon hearing this testimony again while I was editing, well, I don't know. This is what's clinging me on to Terry's side. But we still haven't heard from Terry, from Gwen, and we still haven't heard from our expert witnesses yet. So, you know, I just keep going back and forth, man.
No way it could have happened in any other scenario, if you will, other than being struck from behind on the left side, driving your center of gravity through the right, resulting in the fall to the ground to the right side. By falling on top of him, he provides a cushioning effect against her in the ground. So from a force application, an externally applied force application standpoint, less force was applied to her than to him.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Have you ever worked as a biomechanics expert in snow sports science?
Snow sports science?
Yes.
No one's made themselves out as a snow sports science.
Well, it looks like Gwen has got someone who's an expert in snow sports science. So I look forward to hearing that.
But you're aware, correct, that Mr. Ramon claims that Ms. Paltrow hit Mr. Sanderson squarely in the back?
Again, if he's standing to the side, he wouldn't know exactly how it is. But keep in mind that our center of gravity is right down the center line of our torso. And if there's any Y component to the right, it's going to drive you to the right. And if it's enough to drive that center of gravity outside of your torso, you're going to fall. So it may appear to an observer that someone's being hit directly from behind, but in fact, there is a Y component.
You also performed, as you explained to me in your deposition, you performed a calculation that assumed that Ms. Paltrow was hit by Mr. Sanderson. Is that right?
That's correct. That is correct.
And you ruled that out because you would expect the rib fracture to be in a different place if that had occurred. Is that right?
Not only that, but the force application is just not enough.
We have another witness that it was close to Terry Sanderson, and it's going to sound confusing, but this is Terry Sanderson's son-in-law's brother.
So members of the jury, there's no claim in this lawsuit based on a so-called hit and run. There's no claim before the jury based on a theory of hit and run. And the witness should refrain from using that terminology.
Initially, Terry was suing for $3 million. He was also suing the Deer Valley Ski Resort, and he also was trying to sue for a hit and run. But the court found that it was not a hit and run, and they also dropped a lawsuit against Deer Valley Resort. So the lawsuit went from $3 million. I think it's like capped at like $300K right now.
The biggest changes I saw is in conversation. Like I said before, he was a great conversationalist, and it became difficult because his comprehension had gone down. You get confused. You start talking to him, and he thought you were talking about maybe someone else. Very high energy. Yeah.
Was that the same after the accident?
Negative.
And so far, I believe the witnesses. I believe that Terry did have a huge decline after suffering from this concussion. Next, we're going to talk about the GoPro footage again.
Brought up, but did you ever hear anything about a GoPro video of this event?
No, I did not.
Has Terry ever said anything about that to you?
He has not.
So to your knowledge, there's never been a GoPro video of this event?
That's correct. To my knowledge, there isn't.
When you described your understanding of the accident as you received it from him, I just want to clarify, was it your understanding that that was his own first-person understanding, or that he had received that from someone else?
That was his first-person understanding of the accident.
Okay, so some witnesses are saying that it was own personal account. Some other witnesses are saying that, seems like he was relying on someone else's account about what happened.
So he didn't tell you, I was told this by somebody else, this is what happened.
At this point, I was super excited that the eldest daughter was testifying now because she's the one that responded in the email about a GoPro footage. So now we can hear from her mouth. What GoPro footage are you talking about? Because everyone else had no idea what the meetup link was and what the GoPro footage was about. And in my head, I was thinking, well, did they not really know? Or do they have this video footage that possibly showed Terry running into Gwyneth Paltrow and they're all lying about it?
He expected a lot of us girls, and he also kept us incredibly busy, singing voice lessons and acting and dancing. And so
you got to know your dad from a father perspective, also see him interact in a business perspective.
I did, and he was amazing. So well organized. He ran that office like a tight ship. I think he was very much about character development in us girls, the importance of honesty.
So after you had tried to access this link, you responded to that email, is that correct?
I don't know at what point I was able to access, or if I even did see what was here. It seemed like I would follow through to try to see because this is important information, but I don't know when that happened.
At this point, everyone was thinking, How would you have forgotten about a GoPro footage where your dad collided with Gwyneth Paltrow? How the heck would anyone forget about this? Well, we end up finding out that the link doesn't even link to a GoPro. The link actually just links to a photo. And then she'll explain what she meant by GoPro video.
And I think you said earlier that when you tried to access this, it was a meetup group login, or it required a meetup group login?
Yes. Okay. And I wasn't a member of Meetup, so I was unable to access that.
I want to talk because it's going to be brought up quite a bit. Will you go ahead and read what your note says here?
Dad, I cannot believe how unlucky and how crazy this all is. I also can't believe this is all on GoPro. What are the chances? I am so glad you're okay. How are you feeling this evening? Love, Shay.
With that, after being sent that link, how did any reference to a GoPro video come up that you responded in the way that you did?
After my dad told me about what he was feeling and that he could hardly think, his brain was numb, and that he couldn't take a breath without feeling a stabbing sensation in his chest, and that he had rung his bell. I believe he mentioned that with this big resort and so many people on this green run, there had to be GoPro video. And so he said there has to be GoPro footage. There just has to be, because there was this big blood-curdling scream before I got hit in the back, and that means that a person that had a helmet cam of this GoPro would look towards the scream and catch it all on video. And so I thought, that's brilliant. You know, then we have complete evidence of what happened and who was at fault. And so I kind of assumed that maybe this was GoPro video, and we could rest easy because we would know what happened.
But you had never, he didn't show you a GoPro video?
No, I've never seen GoPro video, and it does not exist as far as I know.
I did mention on stream that this explanation to me just wasn't satisfying in my opinion, and I think I gave it like a 4 out of 10. But you know what? I think I'm more on the side of like, I kind of do believe it. I do believe it. Now, there are a couple of things that were kind of holding me back, you know, such as, well, she was the only person that the dad mentioned this GoPro, possibly, you know, possible GoPro evidence out there in the ether somewhere. If Terry Sanderson thought there was a possible GoPro footage out there, wouldn't he share this theory to his other people, like to his friend Craig, maybe Mark, the son-in-law's brother, maybe other family members, like his sisters and things like that? Wouldn't he even mention this theory to other people? But again, maybe he was concussed and he only mentioned it once. Maybe he forgot about it. And, you know, it's possible that, you know, some of you guys may not believe her because maybe you guys are like, well, it's kind of sus that you're bringing the story up now that Gwyneth Paltrow's team brought it up, and you're like, oh, 7 years later, okay, this is what actually really happened. The other thing is some people are thinking like, oh, maybe, you know, they did have evidence that, you know, he ran into Gwyneth Paltrow, but they deleted it and they're hiding it. But, you know, I think I'm more inclined of believing the family because honestly, when I'm listening to the testimonies, even though I find Mr. Ramon's testimony, the friend that saw the incident, I find his to be more on the unreliable side. But I think for the most part, the witnesses are... They don't seem like liars to me. They seem credible. They seem like good, decent people. So the link that everyone thought linked to a missing GoPro, well, we find out this link is just a picture. And it's a picture that Terry took of the woman that essentially saved him that day. You know, she was the one that brought him on the toboggan. So, you know, this whole GoPro footage thing ended up just being kind of a nothing burger in my opinion.
Now, I'm going to zoom in here, down below on this pre-admitted exhibit. And I want you to look at, if we can get it, I want you to look and see and tell me, I mean, it's a lot of numbers, but do the photos at the numbers at the end of that exhibit, with this exhibit here, do these numbers correlate or match any of these numbers down here?
Shay's going to describe one of the incidents that happens between her dad and her daughter. And this was post-accident. And this is something that it scared the crap out of her and her daughter as well. And because of this, it really damaged the relationship that he has with his granddaughter. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but here's the end result of it.
And just going, you know, I know what to do. I'm the adult here, and just being so awful to her. And it's actually damaged his relationship with her because he was so awful to her. And I got in the front door and closed the door, and I looked back at my little daughter, and she's just red cheeked, and her tears are streaming down her eyes, and he was like, I knew he was going to break the door, Mom. I knew he was going to break the door, and he didn't, luckily, but it was an awful experience, and I have never known my dad to raise his voice or scream or belittle or do those sorts of things. It was just very uncharacteristic of him.
Gwyneth Paltrow now takes a stand, and she's called upon by Terry's side. Terry's side is still presenting their case. She's going to be the second to last witness, with Terry being the last one, and we're going to be listening to it on Monday. Let's see what she has to say and hear what's her account of things.
My understanding is that you are pretty much an intermediate type skier.
I would characterize myself as intermediate.
Did you know the rules at the time of the collision, that if you're in a collision with someone, you need to give your name and information, contact information?
So because I was hit by Mr. Sanderson and he was at fault, I assumed that Eric, who was our ski instructor, who was there at the time, who was overseeing the event, he said, I'm going to leave all of your information. And he said, you should go ski down because my kids were waiting for me.
And I appreciate that, but my question was, did you know of the rule of skiing if you are in a collision that you need to share that information?
I don't think I was aware of the rule.
Okay. Were you aware that there is kind of a rule of common decency to do that?
I would not have left the scene without leaving my information, and my information was left.
Dr. Carrie Oakes, her deposition, wherein she said that, yes, Moses was saying, Mommy, Mommy, watch me.
That she was saying, I don't remember, that while they were skiing, they were saying that?
Yeah.
I don't remember that, no.
All right, okay.
I said, I can still watch my children ski and be skied directly into my back by someone.
And then you continued.
Which is what happened.
Exactly. So you were watching your children when you alleged that you were skied directly into your back by someone.
My daughter was down the hill. My son was to my left. So I was skiing. My eyes were not fixated only on my son when Mr. Sanderson skied directly into my back.
Okay.
Do not recall Moses saying, Mommy, Mommy, watch me on the ski slope.
And your 9-year-old son, you will admit, was on your left and up a bit.
To my recollection.
Okay.
So what Kristen, the lawyer, is trying to say is that, well, it seems like you were distracted because your son was yelling, Mommy, Mommy, watch me. Is it possible that you were distracted and that's how you ran into Terry Sanderson while you were skiing?
You're going down relatively slowly when all of a sudden you heard a strange rustling noise behind you.
Yes.
Okay. And you felt like a rush of air in a strange way.
Yes.
Okay. And 2 skis slid in between my skis.
That's correct.
And all of a sudden there was a body from the whole front of a body pressing into my back.
That's right.
Okay. Like, we'll talk about this in a minute. And there was a man behind me pressing into me. How did you know it was a man?
Because he was making some strange noises that sounded male, and he was large. So I assumed it was a male.
Okay, he was large?
I felt all my back pressing. I was confused at first, and I didn't know exactly what was happening. It's a very strange thing to happen on a ski slope. And I froze, and I would say I got very upset a couple seconds later.
Okay. I didn't know if it was an intentional assault of a sexual nature.
Right.
Okay. Was he grinding and thrusting or something, or just the noises? What made you think it was a sexual assault?
So that was a quick thought that went through my head when I was trying to reconcile what was happening. I was skiing, and 2 skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart, and then there was a body pressing against me, and there was a very strange grunting noise. So my brain was trying to make sense of what was happening. I thought, is this a practical joke? Is someone like doing something perverted? This is really, really strange. My mind was going very, very quickly, and I was trying to ascertain what was happening.
We kept skiing.
Right.
We went to the right.
Yes.
We came crashing down together.
That's right.
Okay. You said this man was behind me on the mountain. My knee and our skis were still sort of tangled up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is that yes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Our bodies were almost spooning, and I moved away quickly.
Yes.
And my knee splayed open, and I was completely in shock.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Would you mind stepping down and us kind of acting this out a little bit so I could get a good feel?
Let's see. Can we approach, Your Honor?
I wish a judge did let them act it out because I do want to see, but he doesn't. Oh, and I do want to mention that we finally do see Terry Sanderson in court. Initially, I kind of gave Terry crap for not appearing in court, but after hearing from one of his doctors and giving an explanation why he doesn't show up, I don't know. I kind of understand.
And you believe that 2 skis slid right between?
That is correct.
Okay. And so all of a sudden you see these 2 skis coming in between your legs. I would have freaked out too.
And I did.
Okay.
His body pressed up into my back.
Okay.
So I froze. I don't know exactly how far the skis would have come through.
Okay.
Because then I noticed his body pressing against my back.
Okay.
And then it was probably a few good seconds, and then we fell to the right. Somebody must have caught an edge.
Okay, so when you froze and you're skiing together, I think you said at one point it was like you were spooning.
Well, when we fell down, I fell on his body, he fell on the ground, and so it was kind of like a spoon on the ground.
And again, if you remember what Craig Ramon said that Terry was like spread eagle, face flat into the snow. But it seems like on this account, I don't know, Gwyneth doesn't really clarify. It seems like they just both fell on their sides together with her landing on top still.
Well, now that Mr. Sanderson is here, and I don't need you to do anything, Terry, but just for comparison's sake, I'm in my heels. We're about the same height, about 5'5" with heels.
It's roughly.
Oh, tell me I'm taller, please. Okay, so we've got Mr. Sanderson that's about 5'5" that comes in back of you, and you said that you felt something huge. What was your word behind
just
you?
a big
body. A big body. All right. And was it just the front of his body that touched the back of your body?
I couldn't see in the back of my head.
Sure.
But I felt a body press against my back.
But there was no grabbing, like he didn't like grab your waist or grab your
No,
arms?
not at all. No,
Nothing like that.
Nothing.
Okay. You guys are on the ground. Now, you realize, right, you're not saying to the jury that this was in any way, shape, or form a sexual assault.
I am not saying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying what went through my mind for a split second when it was happening.
All right, great.
I don't remember if I started yelling at him while I was on the ground. I remember pushing away because I was very upset, and it was still very strange to me what had happened. And I pushed down the hill, and I turned around and I yelled at him.
Okay. Did you scream before you went down?
I don't think so.
Okay. Or if you were still on the ground, but he was still on the ground, right?
Yes.
When you said, "What are you doing?"
Yes.
Okay. Like, why did you do that?
Yes.
And he said, "I think you skied into me."
Yes.
And that's when you were furious and said, "You skied directly into my effing back at the top of your lungs."
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I apologize for my bad language. You skied directly into my effing back, and he said, "Oh, sorry, I'm sorry."
Right. And that was you screaming at him while he's on the ground still, right?
I was yelling at him.
Pretty loud, pretty forceful.
I was pretty upset.
Right? You're small but mighty. When he said, I'm sorry, would you agree that he kind of mumbled it?
Yes.
And then you remember Eric came over, Eric Christensen.
Yes.
Who was Moses's instructor.
Correct.
Okay. The man stood up, and we were all sort of talking.
Yes.
What conversation did you have with Mr. Sanderson standing up?
I wasn't having a conversation with him. Eric was helping him up and asking if he was okay.
Okay. Eric eventually yanked him up, right? He pulled him up.
He helped him up.
Okay. He didn't get up on his own accord.
He helped him.
And were you still standing right there when he helped him?
I believe I was, yes.
You sure you hadn't skied down a little bit?
I might have skied down a little bit. My son was down a little bit, and my now husband came over at some point.
Okay.
I remember moving away from Mr. Sanderson after he collided into me and we hit the ground.
Okay. And do you remember, we've heard from Craig Ramon, he was the first individual who testified. Do you remember him coming to the scene?
I do not.
You don't remember him at all?
No.
You don't remember him being there or asking you, are you okay?
I do not. Mr. Christensen stayed and filled out the report, made sure Mr. Sanderson was okay, and said to me, you can go ahead.
Mr. Christensen did not see the incident, didn't see the collision?
Correct. Okay. He just saw us right afterwards.
Right. And in fact, nobody from Deer Valley saw the collision.
Correct.
Your kids didn't see the collision.
That's right.
Okay. The only person that, and you may not be aware of this, the only person who says that they saw the collision was Mr. Ramon.
Yes.
Okay. The way you answer that makes me think that you don't believe that he saw it.
He said he was 40 feet away and colorblind. I don't know how he can be positive about what he saw, especially with how much he changed his story.
Well, what does colorblind have to do with anything? My husband's colorblind. We tease him all the time that he can't tell red or green. But what does that have to do with not seeing who hit who?
Well, if you have two people in ski gear with helmets on and you're 40 plus feet away, I'm not sure how you can discern who is who.
And Ramon did say that he couldn't tell the difference with what Gwyneth Paltrow was wearing that day and what Terry was wearing that day. So, I don't know.
Okay, well.
And I can tell you that he didn't, because Mr. Sanderson categorically hit me on that ski slope, and that is the truth.
And I'm sure that that's what you believe. You and Mr. Sanderson, if you're almost 5'10", Terry's 5'5", pushing it. If you two stood next to each other, do you think that somebody would confuse the two of you?
I don't know. I'm telling you what happened.
Did you inquire?
What is your name again? Sorry. Kristen?
Yes.
Sorry, I was going to say Kristen.
Sorry.
I think you have to keep in mind when you're the victim of a crash, right? Your psychology is not necessarily thinking about the person who perpetrated it.
So the answer to my question is no, you did not inquire.
I did not know that he had sustained injuries like that. I thought it was very minor on the day. I stuck around long enough for him to say he was okay, to stand up, that he told Mr. Christensen he was okay.
At this point, I believe that both parties truly believe. Gwyneth Paltrow thinks Terry ran into him. Terry thinks Gwyneth Paltrow did it. I don't know. This is a tough one, man. This is like really complicated. Next, we're going to get into Terry Sanderson's lawyer, kind of like digging her claws into Gwyneth Paltrow a little bit and telling her that like, you're asking for $1, but you're not really asking for $1, are you? So again, Terry Sanderson is suing Gwyneth Paltrow. Initially it was $3 million. I believe it's at $300,000 right now. And Gwyneth Paltrow is also countersuing, but she's only asking for $1.
So
It's a
I'm
yes-
asking
it's a yes
for
or no.
$1 for me and then reimbursement of attorney's fees, which is a separate thing.
And that could be a substantial amount, correct?
Potentially.
Okay. And when your counsel got up waving that $1, don't you think that's a little bit of a mischaracterization? $1, that's a mischaracterization, isn't it?
I took it as I would receive that $1, which is all I am asking for.
She's now going to be questioned by her own lawyer.
Do you feel some empathy for Mr. Sanderson and his declining brain?
I really do. I feel very sorry for him. It seems like he's had a very difficult life, but I did not cause the accident, so I cannot be at fault for anything that subsequently happened to him.
Is it true or not true that at the time of the collision and in the aftermath, you were or were not wearing a helmet?
I was.
And goggles?
Correct.
No one's thinking lawsuit yet, right?
No.
And that's you on the left with the G, and
Yes.
it says, can you read it?
It says, I came in. That guy sort of hurt me. I'm going to get a massage at 3. Gigi is here if he wants to come. I think it's impossible that I let out a noise upon being hit because it was a very slow move. It wasn't an impact. The impact came when we fell on the ground. So it's very possible that when the impact was made, I screamed. But I do not recall making a sound until we were falling or on the ground.
Okay.
Terry says that he heard a King Kong scream before he was hit. Even Ramon said that he heard a scream and then he saw Terry getting hit. So we're getting completely different accounts of what happened.
Mr. Sanderson was out cold for 2 or more minutes. Do you recall that testimony?
To be honest, he said so many different minutes, so many times, I don't recall exactly.
All right. Assume that he said minutes, that
Okay.
he was literally unconscious for minutes. Did you observe that?
That Mr. Sanderson was unconscious for minutes?
Yes.
No, he was not.
Or unconscious at all. They're saying that he yelled aggressively toward Mr. Sanderson. Did you observe that?
He did not yell at Mr. Sanderson, no.
He's going to testify on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
This is Christensen's report.
Yes.
It says male skier took her out from behind. Is
Yes.
that what happened?
Yes.
This report is accurate?
Very.
I didn't see it, but heard her scream as she went down. Do you dispute that?
I don't.
I skied directly to her. Did he do that?
He did, yes.
The man was behind her. Both were in discomfort. Is that all true?
Yes.
During lunch, she talked of being stiff and sore. Is that a true statement?
It is.
Can we go to the second third now, please? It says on the right there, a patroller came by to check on everyone. Do you have a memory of that?
I don't. I'm afraid.
And then the bottom third, please. First thing male skier stated was that she, meaning you, appeared right in front of him. All right. Did you hear that?
No.
Do you dispute it occurred?
No.
Thus admitting he was the uphill skier.
He was.
She never saw him because he came in from behind.
Correct.
Did you see Mr. Sanderson in front of you?
No, he was behind me.
I think there's a reference here that given your height and Mr. Sanderson less height, less being less tall, that somehow you couldn't have felt him against your back. Can you just comment on that?
Well, he was uphill of me, so he was higher than me, and he pressed whatever of his body against my back when his skis slid between mine.
Were you standing still when the skis came between you?
No, I was gently skiing, and he kind of gently skied right into me.
Does that mean Mr. Sanderson was going faster than you were going?
No, it wasn't an impact.
Sanderson had his head downhill, spread eagle, Out cold. Did you observe that?
No.
Was his head downhill? Who hit who?
Oh my gosh.
I want it.
What a waste of time.
Sustained.
3 words, Your Honor. We'll let it go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cross.
And we are all caught up. Terry Sanderson is going to be testifying for his own team on Monday. And then shortly afterwards, Gwyneth Paltrow is going to present her case. So this is a tough one. It's complicated. Initially, I think I was leaning more towards Gwyneth Paltrow's side, but then I'll hear things from Terry's side and just go back and forth. And then like the GoPro thing kind of ended up being really not a huge deal if you believe what Shay is saying, the sister. And then in terms of the link, you know, it was just a link to a photo that it's actually live right now. So I don't know why the defense made such a huge deal about it when they could just look it up and just figure out what that link really was. Terry's side, they should have got ahead about that link in the GoPro thing and they should have mentioned it ahead of time because I think Owens did a really good job at priming our minds into thinking that, oh my God, there's something crazy going on with this GoPro footage. Because the GoPro footage ended up being not a huge deal, I ended up believing Terry's witnesses more. But it's just tough, man. Because like I said, I truly believe that Terry had a concussion, suffered the 4 fractured ribs because of the accident. And I do truly believe that, you know, Terry had a change in personality after the accident. I believe that his witnesses think they're being truthful. I believe that he, you know, believes that Craig Ramone is telling the truth when he said that Gwyneth Paltrow ran to his back. Because I also believe that Gwen believes she's telling her truth as well. So man, I wish we had some like CCTV footage or something like that. I felt like Terry's strongest witness is the one that was doing the Zoom call, the doctor, and he was the one that mentioned that, you know, if Terry had hit Gwyneth Paltrow from behind, he doesn't believe they'd be able to rotate enough within that 1, 2, 3 seconds that, you know, as they were falling. And then also Terry would have fell on his back. So that's what was really important to figure out. Okay, what did Gwyneth Paltrow say? Because I think Gwyneth Paltrow did say that Terry fell on the side, but then Craig said that Terry fell face forward. I also do want to mention that to me, Terry's story seems to make more sense. Like to me, having Gwyneth Paltrow hit him from behind, she landed on top of him, he cracked his ribs. Gwyneth Paltrow's story with Terry slowly sliding in behind her, they somehow fell together, but how did she end up on top of him? So I'm waiting to hear from her experts because maybe they can, you know, explain it in a way where I can visualize it better. So I'm more of a visual person. I can't wait to hear from Terry because I want to see what he says. Although I do have concerns for him though, because I feel like he might have a tough time on the stand, especially, you know, because I feel really bad for him that he suffered from this concussion. And then afterwards, you know, we're going to hear from Gwyneth Paltrow's team, her experts and stuff like that. So maybe her experts will dispute what Terry's experts said. I don't feel like there's one side that's just grossly lying. I feel like they're both being truthful. I feel like people have their memories jumbled up as well because sometimes people don't remember things correctly. And especially since so much time has passed by, you know, it may seem that the witness is not credible because they're having memory issues, but you know, it was a long time ago. This happened in 2016. So I think the trial's going to go on for another week. And then afterwards, the jury's going to go and deliberate and we're going to have a verdict. And I'm going to be honest, initially, I was not interested in this case at all. It was when I was watching another true crime channel and she briefly mentioned the Gwyneth Paltrow stuff. I watched some court TV stuff and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to know what happened. I don't know what's going on because I didn't realize both sides had such different stories. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. But tomorrow we'll be back for the rest of the trial. I'll see you guys on Monday. I do live stream this. Stop by on the YouTube channel. We can react to it together. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. Let me know what your thoughts are. Where are you at right now? Do you think you're more siding with, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow, or do you side with Terry more? You're not sure. Are you going back and forth like I am? I feel like I try to give both sides benefit of the doubt. You know, I try not to think that people are just malicious and evil for no reason. There has to be evidence to back that up. And then similarly, I'm not going to hate on Gwyneth Paltrow just because she's a celebrity, or some people are hating on her because, you know, they say that she's like kind of like a wonky, weird person, sells weird products and things like that. But I'm just trying to look at the case for what it is and make my judgment based off of that. But it's tough. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment below what you think, and I'll see you guys in the live streams. Have a good one. Also, I've been working on this for like 20 hours now, and it's very, very late. I'm just very tired. So I'm sorry that I'm not as insightful, and I don't know. I'm just so tired. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys later.